Ahead of us stands the tallest volcano in the lower 48 states, carrying more glacial ice than any other peak in America. The trail under our feet begins at a place so beautiful that the woman who named it, back in 1885, simply called it paradise. John Muir climbed through these same meadows and called them the most extravagantly beautiful of all the Alpine gardens he had ever seen. Today we are hiking the Skyline Trail from the visitor center at Paradise up to Panorama Point, a rocky shoulder nearly 6,800 feet up the side of Mount Rainier. It is late June, the high country is still buried in snow, and the mountain is out in full. Let us go and meet it. We are in western Washington state, in the Cascade Range, roughly 60 miles southeast of Seattle. Mount Rainier rises alone here, so much higher than everything around it that on clear days it floats over the skylines of Seattle and Tacoma like a mirage. Our trailhead is Paradise, a famous pocket of meadows perched at 5,400 feet on the mountain's south slope. From there, the Skyline Trail makes a 5.5-mile loop through the high meadows, and we are walking its western leg, about 2 miles up to Panorama Point and back the same way. The climb gains around 1,400 feet, almost all of it in open country, with the summit staring down at us the entire time. Mount Rainier is a stratovolcano, a great cone of lava flows and ash built up over roughly 500,000 years. Its summit stands 14,410 feet above sea level, which makes it the highest peak in the Cascade Range. 28 named glaciers drape its flanks, covering about 30 square miles of the mountain in moving ice. The Emmons Glacier on the northeast side is the largest by area in the contiguous United States, and the Carbon Glacier reaches the lowest elevation of any glacier in the lower 48. No other mountain in the country wears ice like this, and every stream we cross today was born from it. We start the morning at the Henry M. Jackson Memorial Visitor Center, named for the longtime Washington senator who spent a career shaping the laws that protect places like this. It is just after 8:30, early enough that the crowds are thin, and the light is still soft on the upper snowfields. The Skyline Trail wastes no time, climbing from the first step on a path that begins as pavement and quickly turns to stone stairs. Subalpine firs stand in dark clusters around us, still wearing streaks of last winter. Above them there is nothing but white slopes and blue sky, all the way to the summit. The name on the map came from the sea. In 1792, Captain George Vancouver of the British Royal Navy sailed into Puget Sound, saw this enormous white cone on the horizon, and named it for his friend, Rear Admiral Peter Rainier, a man who never once laid eyes on the mountain. But the peak had carried names for thousands of years before that. The Puyallup, Nisqually, and other Coast Salish peoples knew it by names like Tahoma and Tacoma, words that live on in the city of Tacoma at its feet. Two names, one from a passing ship and one from deep time, and the mountain answers to both. The meadows we are climbing through earned their name in the summer of 1885. Verinda Longmire, of the pioneering Longmire family that ran a mineral springs resort lower on the mountain, rode up here and found the slopes covered in wildflowers. She looked out over the color and declared the place a paradise, and the name simply stuck. Within a few years, Paradise had become the most beloved corner of the mountain, the spot where campers, climbers, and painters all gather. A century and a half later, it is still where almost everyone meets Mount Rainier for the first time. The grade is honest right away, and at this elevation we feel every step of it. The trail weaves between islands of stunted trees, crossing the first big patches of unmelted snow. Meltwater runs everywhere, chattering under the snowbanks and sheeting across the stone steps. Every switchback opens the view a little wider, until the Tadush Range behind us stands up like a row of shark teeth. It is hard to keep a steady pace, mostly because it is hard to stop looking up. In August of 1888, John Muir came through these exact meadows on his way to the summit, 50 years old and already the most famous wilderness voice in America. His party camped just above Paradise, and what he found here stayed with him for the rest of his life. He described a garden filled knee-deep with fresh, lovely flowers of every hue, the most luxuriant and the most extravagantly beautiful of all the Alpine gardens he ever beheld in all his mountaintop wanderings. That is not a tourist brochure, that is John Muir, a man who had seen Yosemite, the Sierra, and Alaska. This hillside is the place that outbloomed them all. Muir did more than admire the flowers, he went home and fought for them. He lent his name and energy to the Sierra Club campaign to protect the mountain, alongside scientists, railroads, and local boosters. On March 2, 1899, President William McKinley signed the bill, and Mount Rainier became the 5th national park in the United States, following Yellowstone, Sequoia, Yosemite, and General Grant. It was carved out of the Pacific Forest Reserve, the first national park ever created from land already set aside as a forest reserve. Everything we walk through today has been public ground for more than 1¼ centuries. The trail stacks up switchbacks beneath the knoll called Alta Vista, and the morning turns into simple, repetitive work. Boots on stone, boots on snow, breathe and climb. Other hikers appear as tiny colored dots strung along the ridgeline above us. Behind us, the parking lot has shrunk to a toy, and the visitor center roof looks like a fallen leaf. The mountain does this to everything. It takes whatever people build and makes it small. The famous flower show here runs on a brutal schedule. These meadows may get only 6 or 8 snow-free weeks a year, so the plants sprint through their whole lives in a single burst. Avalanche lilies follow the melting edge of the snow so closely that they sometimes push up through the last inch of it. Lupin, paintbrush, western pasquiflower, and dozens of other species stack bloom on top of bloom through late July and August. The deep snow is actually the gardener. It crushes and buries any tree seedling that tries to invade, keeping these slopes open for the flowers century after century. By now the trail has mostly vanished, and we are walking on a highway of packed snow marked by the boot prints of everyone before us. This is completely normal here in late June, because Paradise is one of the snowiest inhabited places on the planet. An average winter drops about 640 inches of snow on this slope, which is more than 53 feet. The snowpack lingers so long that midsummer hikers routinely cross fields like this one in shorts and sunglasses. Under our feet, somewhere down there, the flowers are waiting. The winter of 1971 to 1972 went far beyond average. That season, the gauges at Paradise measured 1,122 inches of snowfall, more than 93 feet, a world record for measured snowfall at the time. Buildings here spent that winter as white mounds, with crews tunneling down to find doorways. The old ranger station was buried so deep that only its chimney and flagpole hinted anything was below. When people call this the snowiest place in America, they are not exaggerating, they are quoting a ledger. We grind up the last rise toward Glacier Vista, and the sound of the Meadows changes. The bird song and meltwater fade behind a low, cold silence coming off the valley to our left. The snow slope rolls away, and suddenly there is a hole in the world beside the trail, a deep trench carved straight down the mountain. A river of broken ice sits inside it. This is what we climbed up here to see. That is the Nisqually Glacier, pouring off the summit ice cap, and down a valley it has been carving for tens of thousands of years. Its meltwater becomes the Nisqually River, which runs all the way to Puget Sound. Around 1850, at the peak of the Little Ice Age, this glacier pushed far down the valley below us, near where the Park Road crosses today. It has been pulling back ever since, leaving behind a canyon of raw gray rubble that shows exactly how thick the ice once was. Standing here, you are looking at a timeline written in stone. The Nisqually is not just admired, it is measured. And it has been measured longer than almost any glacier in America. Surveyors began recording the position of its terminus in 1918, and the annual measurements have continued ever since. In May of 1970, instruments caught the glacier surging downhill at 29 inches per day, but the long story is retreat. Between 1896 and 2021, the Nisqually shrank from nearly 4 square miles of ice to about 1.5, losing more than half of itself within the span of the measurements. From the Overlook, we can trace the whole glacier with our eyes, from the blinding icefall high on the mountain down to the gray, rock-covered snout in the valley. The surface is torn into crevasses, long blue mouths that swallow the sunlight. Every so often the ice cracks somewhere out of sight, a deep knock that arrives a heartbeat late. It is the closest thing this landscape has to a pulse. We linger longer than we plan to, because it is very hard to walk away from a living glacier. The Nisqually is only one spoke of the wheel. 28 named glaciers radiate from Rainier's summit like the arms of a frozen starfish, each one grinding its own valley into the volcano's flanks. The Emmons spreads across more than 4 square miles on the northeast side, the biggest single glacier in the lower 48. The Carbon, hiding in the mountain's cold northern shadow, dips lower than any other American glacier outside Alaska. Together, they hold the headwaters of 5 major river systems, which means this one mountain waters a whole corner of Washington. And underneath all that ice, the mountain is still alive. Rainier is an active volcano that last erupted about 1,000 years ago, and geologists rank it among the most closely watched volcanoes in the United States. The concern is not just lava, it is mud. About 5,600 years ago, part of the summit collapsed and sent an enormous flow called the Osceola mudflow racing all the way to Puget Sound, burying the land where towns now stand. Seismometers and sensors listen to the mountain around the clock, which lets millions of neighbors live comfortably beside a giant that is merely asleep. Above Glacier Vista, the route tilts up in earnest, taking the steep snowfield below Panorama Point in a rising line of kicked steps. This is the section where conversations die out and everyone finds their own slow rhythm. The snow is soft enough to hold an edge, and the run out below is long enough to keep us honest. Step, plant, breathe, and repeat, a few hundred vertical feet of simple effort. The ledge above us grows closer with every switchback, and the view behind us grows into something ridiculous. If a sharp whistle cuts across the slope up here, it is probably not a person. These meadows belong to hoary marmots, roly-poly alpine rodents the size of house cats, named for the silver-gray fur across their shoulders. They spend the short summer eating flowers almost non-stop, doubling their body fat before retreating underground. Then they hibernate for 7 to 8 months, sleeping through the entire record-breaking winter beneath the snow. Their piercing alarm whistle earned them the nickname Whistlers, and it is as much a sound of Rainier as the wind itself. The last stretch to Panorama Point always feels longer than it looks from below. The air is thinner up here than anything most lowland lungs are used to, and the snow gives a little with each step. We pass the last stunted trees, bent into flags by a century of wind, and then there is nothing above us but rock, snow, and the enormous white dome of the summit. A final rise, a last few steps onto bare stone, and then the ground simply stops climbing. This is Panorama Point, a rocky perch at about 6,800 feet on the mountain's south shoulder. We have climbed roughly 1,400 feet in a little over 2 miles, and the mountain has saved its wages for this exact spot. Behind us, Rainier's summit fills half the sky, close enough now to read the crevasses on the upper glaciers. In front of us, the world falls away for 100 miles. Every hard breath on the way up just got paid back with interest. The name is not a boast, it is a description. From this ledge on a clear day, the whole southern Cascade Range stands in a row. The jagged Tatoosh peaks crowd the foreground just across the valley. Beyond them rises the broad white shoulder of Mount Adams, and to its right the blunted crater of Mount St. Helens, which blew itself open in 1980. On the best days, the faint cone of Mount Hood floats on the horizon, 100 miles away in Oregon. 4 volcanoes, 3 of them over 10,000 feet, all visible from one snowy bench. Look up the snow slope above us, and you can sometimes see a dotted line of climbers inching higher. They are headed for Camp Muir, the stone shelters perched above 10,000 feet on the ridge where Muir's party rested during the 1888 climb, and which now carries his name. It is the main high camp for summit attempts, and thousands of climbers pass through it every season. From their camp, they rise at midnight and climb by headlamp across the glaciers to reach the crater rim at dawn. Panorama Point is where the hiker's mountain ends and the mountaineer's mountain begins. The first climbers known to have stood on that summit got there in August of 1870. Hazard Stevens and Philemon Beecher Van Trump fought their way up over 2 days, guided partway by a Yakama man named Sluiskin, who warned them the summit was no place for the living. Caught by nightfall on top, they survived by huddling in steam caves melted into the crater ice by the volcano's own heat, a furnace hiding under the world of frost. They staggered down the next day, half frozen and entirely famous. 18 years later, it was Van Trump himself who guided John Muir up the same mountain. We claim a slab of warm rock and let the morning's work drain out of our legs. Around us, other hikers arrive one by one, and every single one of them does the same thing. They turn a slow full circle with their mouth open. Gray birds patrol the rocks looking for dropped crumbs, and the wind comes and goes in big soft pulses. The summit above us looks close enough to touch and is still a vertical 1.5 miles away. It is a good place to eat a sandwich, and an even better place to feel small. People have been celebrating up here for more than a century. The road to paradise was finished in 1911, letting automobiles chug all the way up to the Meadows. 6 years later, the Paradise Inn opened its doors, a grand timber lodge trimmed like a European Alpine resort, its great hall framed with silvery logs. In the early decades, visitors skied, rode horses, and even toured the glacier ice. The inn still greets summer travelers today, one of the last of the great national park lodges, with the same mountain filling its windows. Eventually, the wind makes the decision for us, and we start back down the way we came. Descending is a different hike entirely, the mountain at our backs and 100 miles of Washington laid out ahead like a map. The snowfields that fought us on the way up now hurry us along, and some hikers simply sit down and slide, whooping down grooves polished by everyone before them. Far below, the visitor center glints at the meadow's edge. Gravity, for once, is on our side. These meadows nearly loved themselves to death. By the mid-20th century, millions of footsteps were carving braided ruts through the fragile gardens, and plants that take years to flower were being trampled in seconds. So the park rebuilt the trails in stone, posted its meadow stewards, and asked every visitor for the same simple promise: stay on the path. It works. The scars slowly heal, and the flowers return to ground that was once bare dirt. Paradise survives because generations of hikers agreed that it should. The last stretch drops us back among the subalpine firs, where the air turns warmer and smells of wet stone and evergreen. Meltwater is still singing under the snow, carrying the morning sunshine downhill toward the Nisqually River and eventually the sea. We came up these steps in shadow and we come down them in full daylight, with the whole mountain burning white over our shoulders. 2 miles up, 2 miles down, and somehow the day feels much bigger than 4 miles. Paradise is the rare place that actually keeps the promise of its name. One last look back, because nobody leaves this trail without one. The Skyline Trail is the shortest walk in America to a living glacier, a world record snowfield, and a front row seat on a sleeping volcano, all wrapped in the Alpine garden that John Muir crowned above every other. Come in late June for the snow and the solitude, or wait for August when these slopes turn into a carpet of wildflowers. Either way, the mountain will be here, making its own weather and its own rules, the way it has for 500,000 years. Thank you for watching. Follow for more of the trails of the world.